everybody, and welcome to another episode of Reluctant Hero podcast. My name is Pauline, and I'm a peak performance and creativity coach, and I work in all areas that relate to expressing yourself authentically and bringing creativity to the front and inspiring the world through your own inspiration and being fully yourself. And I've created this podcast in order to inspire others to stories of the people who have overcome some kind of reluctance. The name of the podcast is Reluctant Hero because we all have the hero inside within ourselves. And sometimes we may find ourselves reluctant to be starting on that hero's journey. And through these stories of people who have overcome some kind of challenge, I hope that you, listener, will find some kind of truth within yourselves that will help you to move past your own reluctance so you can fully express yourself authentically on this road of hero's journey. And in this episode today, we have a guest, Nicolette. She is the sole female owner, entrepreneur. She has started the platform called Womanship, which helps women and wellness professionals thrive in this world and really express our gifts. And I will let her introduce herself more fully. But this podcast episode is going to be about all kinds of things pertaining to leadership and women and all of this aspect. So I'm really curious as to where it goes. So Nicolette, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, firstly, thank you very much, Pauline, for having me as part of your podcast. It's a real pleasure for me to be here. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I describe myself as a midlife woman with a 100% record of getting through bad days. And I think that's just really important for everybody to think if they're listening to this, then they have that same 100% record. So that's something, especially as a solo female founder, I have to keep reminding myself. I am 55 years old. And I have been living for the past 17, 18 years in Amsterdam, the Netherlands, but I'm originally from the UK. And I am, my background is in advertising, marketing, working for big companies like Saatchi and Saatchi. And now I find myself as a solo female founder, following my purpose, which is helping women and wellness professionals to connect.
Wow, I love that. And I especially love that 100% overcoming all the challenges up to date, that saying the way you presented it really shifts the perspective of how no matter how difficult your past has been, you're here now and you are okay and you have overcome already a lot of stuff. So in light of this reluctance, kind of, even though somebody might be reluctant to continue on, in the past they already had a whole bunch of success, so it really brings a different light towards even the journey of life in itself. But can you tell us a little bit more about what inspired you to start this business and this platform?
Certainly. So I guess the story for me with Womanship started around 2017 and 18, sitting in Ibiza with 7 of my UK girlfriends, sitting around this glorious pool. And I guess tapping ourselves on the back and congratulating ourselves with, how well we'd done in life. And then the conversation turned to what was happening with our minds and our bodies during what I now know as perimenopause. And I'd never heard that word before. And we were piecing together bits of information, and it kind of struck me as insane that menopause is something that women are going to go through, whether they have an easy one or a difficult one. And yet, as women of the world with supposed education and knowledge, we had so little awareness around what it actually meant. So with lockdown, a lot of my freelance work dried up. And I started to do some research into what I thought might become a project around menopause or perimenopause. And it's a really negative voyage of discovery. I mean, I think when I was researching it back then, they said there were 35 to 38 different symptoms. I think now it's gone up to 45. Everyone's heard of the ones like, hot flashes and night sweats, but it brings a lot of mind altering things like anxiety with it as well, that a lot of women aren't aware of. It's the highest rate of misprescription of antidepressants, highest suicide rates. I was getting deeper and deeper into this area, but what I realized from my background in marketing was that the women who I really wanted to target were the women who were on the cusp, on the very edge of it, and not realizing what it was actually doing to their minds as well as their bodies. So, for example, it's a very high burnout rate. And often those burnouts can be attributed as much to hormonal change as women becoming burnt out with their careers. So I get a lot of women coming to me at that kind of age and going, I think I'm burning out. And I'm going, check your hormones. It's probably your hormones. Anyway, so I realized I couldn't reach the women who I most wanted to target. So I put the idea down, and it was something that my partner said that kept going round and round my head. And he said, I can't believe that given the amount you women talk, you don't talk about the really important things. And I think every woman that I speak to just nods and smiles and laughs at that sentence. And I couldn't get it out my head because I kept going through all the times in my life where I'd struggled with stuff on my own and not necessarily talked about it openly. And all my female friends were agreeing. And even though everyone was nodding, him being, I guess, a man and coming at it from a slightly different perspective, said, well, you can't just nod to it, you need to prove it. So I ended up doing some research into how women worry. And it turns out that women are worrying all the time. I think 75%, 74% said that they had a problem or worry that stayed on their mind in the last week, over 40% in the last 24 hours. And the list of things that we're worrying about all fall into the same buckets. So, career and finance, sex and relationships, motherhood and family, emotional well-being, health and fitness, aging and menopause, that they all fall into, I think, 8 buckets. But the interesting thing that came out was the fact that only 29% of women felt they could be completely open and honest about the problem or worry that they were facing, and only 21% about how they were feeling emotionally. Even with their closest friends, they felt they couldn't share, in other words, their problems or their worries completely. And the reasons were all the same: embarrassment, fear of judgment, fear of being the only one, fear of it being used against you, and fear of burdening or overburdening others. And then that makes sense of the emotional score being so low. So if I'm feeling really emotionally low, I actually don't share how I'm feeling fully with, for example, my mother, because then she's going to worry about me. So as women, we hold back. I think 3/4 of women felt better just by the act of sharing. So whether it was being able to share openly online or with somebody in person, just the act of sharing makes women feel better. And it's almost the first step to them starting to sort their own problems out. It's not that they necessarily need the answers, just the ability to share that they're going through something helps make it more real for them to sort themselves out. And often we share with people we don't know very well, because it takes away that fear of judgment that goes with it. So they're just hearing about one thing in our life, sitting in the hairdresser salon or meeting somebody on a plane journey. You'll tend to talk about things that sometimes you may not share even with your closest friends because it removes that fear of judgment. And so the idea of womanship was born. So what I am building, in the process of building, which will hopefully go live in the next few weeks in the beta test phase, what I'm building is a platform that has 2 sides to it. The first side is a women's community. Now, there are lots of women's communities out there. The difference with this one is that it covers all the subjects that I was mentioning earlier, because a woman's life happens at the same time. You don't just go through motherhood. You may go through motherhood and career issues, or you may be going through IVF and pregnancy and be dealing with bereavement. So it brings together all the subjects that women are worrying about most. Women have to be members to join. And once they're on the platform, they get content and events that are related to the subject areas they're interested in. But what it also offers them is a forum belonging to each subject, And when they're on the platform, they can ask their questions anonymously to take away that fear of judgment. And it's also just about positive support. So as a woman, our experiences can vary widely on hormonal things alone. So if you think you can have easy periods or difficult one, easy getting pregnant, difficult getting pregnant. And what can happen is that women don't support women who have something or experience life differently to they do. And for me, it's a real thing of equity that unless we start supporting each other as women and understand and supporting the whole range of being a woman, we will never get equity. Because men haven't supported us to give it to us to this date, so we have to do it by coming together. It's also all about just positive support. And by that, I mean, sometimes it's just the knowledge that somebody else is going through what you've been through or has gone through it makes you feel not alone. And that's really important for women because we go through so much on our own. So my example would be through going through perimenopausal dip. And I'd done all the reading and I knew that it can present symptoms that are like depression. But having done all the research, when it happened to me, I didn't feel I could tell anybody because I was embarrassed about how I felt. And then I got a really simple text message from a friend of mine and it said, hey, Nick, I know I can say this to you because you won't think I'm going crazy, but do you ever wake up in the morning and feel, what's the point? Now, it wasn't like I was going to jump out the open window, but I burst into tears because she summed up exactly how I was feeling. And just knowing that somebody else was feeling the same thing made me feel like I wasn't going crazy. And that was the start of me crawling my way out of this pit. So that support and that knowledge that you're not alone is very important.
Wow, I love everything that you mentioned and how far you have thought through with this platform and your beginnings and your inspiration, because it is a very relevant area and something we don't really know much about. We don't really know much about perimenopause and maybe even menopause. It's kind of an abstract concept that I perceive women to wait to find out once you actually get there. Nobody wants to look at it ahead of time because it's overwhelming. And the biological predisposition for experiencing more negative emotion than men and women has been already researched and identified. It is something that women have propensity for and something that we just have to deal with because it is built in. The focus is different. The way our brains are is biologically different based on the hormones and the structure that it creates. But one of the things that I noticed or thought of when you actually started talking about reluctance to express how women are feeling, I find that actually we have it in both ways. We have the same reluctance in men to speak about their emotions and fear of judgment, severe fear of judgment for being emotional at all in many cases. And then we also have that in women. So women afraid to, they know they have emotions, they're just afraid to overwhelm others with it. Men are aware that they have emotions, are definitely very resistant to talking about or experiencing it. So on both sides, the human culture and human race kind of been repressing the essential part of themselves that makes them human.
Completely agree. And it's funny, one of the questions I get asked is, why are you setting this up just for women? And I'm saying, I guess women are my specialist subject. And I think there are a lot of things that we need to understand about ourselves first before we can make this more open. So, an example would be it's not just menopause we're covering, it's all the different subjects. And an example of another area where women don't talk would be miscarriage, for example. And so I know I went through 4 or 5 miscarriages myself, didn't end up having children. But, after the first one, which was at 12 weeks, and you're not meant to speak to anybody about it before that because the viability isn't huge at that stage. But your mind and body has gone through so many changes. And so I was a talker and I told people that I'd just miscarried. And the number of women who I knew who said, oh, I had one 3 months ago, or I had one 6 months ago. And because there's a shame related to, I couldn't carry a child, it was something about me that made this not go any further. Women don't talk about it. And yet you need to talk about it to express your feelings, to move on from it. And so there's so many instances that women go through that are like that, that I think this platform is the idea to give them the space to actually talk about it and understand they're not alone, understand they're not the only ones. So that's part of it. And then the second side of the platform is for wellness professionals. So did a lot of research around wellness professionals, and they are often solo female entrepreneurs, and they're not necessarily business people or marketeers. And there are lots of figures available in terms of, I think, 85% of coaches spend less than 50% of their time on paid activities. Over 76% feel overwhelmed by the day-to-day admin and the marketing and the, holding notes and everything that they need to do around running a business. So what the platform does is give them practice management software. So it pulls in the ability to keep patient records, share documents, message, video calls, book meetings, book video meetings, so they can become more efficient by being able to run their practice with everything they need in one place. But what it also enables them to do is help drive leads by publishing their content and events into the community. So they can do that from the platform. So if you're doing a good event on, a webinar, things I need to know before I go for IVF, or how to deal with grief in an article, then it should lead people to follow you as a professional, see your content, go to your events, and then hopefully book a one-to-one with you. So it acts as lead generation. So I'm trying to create a wellness marketplace for women driven by content, advice, and services from wellness professionals.
That is amazing. I love that. And it has been, in the past at least, the trend for wellness professionals to be women oftentimes. It relates to the nurturing capacity and wanting to help and support others and connectivity in all the ways in which women really feel supported to their community. So in what you're describing, it seems that there's a perfect way for wellness professionals who may be women to also be part of the circle where they can share their feelings and their experiences authentically and without fear of judgment, so that they can be more effective in their wellness profession, which is really great approach, I think.
And it's the idea of bringing women together is something that really motivates me, because I think as women we've very rarely spoken across man-made borders about the things that make us women. And there's more that bind me together with somebody across the other side of the world, of a different race, of a different religion, through hormones alone, than separates us. And so for me, being able to come together as women, raise issues that are important to us and realize that they are big issues. I mean, hashtag Me Too, the Me Too movement only started because a few women were able to tell their stories, were brave enough to tell their stories. And then the rest of the female population realized that they'd experienced the same thing, and it became a thing. So I think it's about having these opportunities to come together, share our collective experiences, show our strength and support each other so that we can get equity. And the world needs more female energy.
Yeah, that is a very relevant point to make. And I'm curious to know how you perceive further this aspect of women's energy in the current world where we are facing so much chaos, so much unpredictability, and especially because women are prone to worrying. How is female energy and the wellness profession and all of the aspects of evolved and more aware woman can shift or help the world to move into the new future with everything that we're facing right now?
So I think that women naturally worry more than men. I think men have the ability to put things into boxes, think about them in isolation, and it can be a real advantage. And I think women tend to connect lots of different things. So we spend a lot of time worrying. And for me, if we get the right support with the worries that we have, imagine the brain capacity to go and do other things. If we're not worrying about the biological things that happen in our body because they feel strange because nobody else is talking about them, or the mental shifts that happen in our heads that we think just are specific to us, then we would have more time to actually help the world. And, I think it's not that there's anything against men in any way, shape, or form, but being realistic, men have led things for so long, and look at the situation we're in. And I believe when you have a look at, how many women are doing drive-by shootings in the US, how many women are doing the stabbings in the UK, many women are in the governments of Israel or Hamas or in Russia or Ukraine. And so all I'm saying is that by bringing women more into these areas, they naturally have a more nurturing capacity. So therefore, I think by having more of a 50-50 balance in power, we would reduce some of the issues we have in the world. And I'm not saying women should take over, I'm not saying we should, but all I'm asking for is to give us the balance to show that we bring something different than men do to the table, and we need both sides to balance this equation.
Absolutely, 100%. And it's been said that when you give a man a power, then it would be more of a collection of it, and they would be more prone to keep it. And women, when they receive it, they want to share it. It's been noticed in many different cultures, in many different aspects. It's not something that I'm making it up. And we have definitely stepped sideways in our evolution, I think. And it's not to say anything bad about the masculine way of leading, because they're great builders. We need them. We need that masculine approach. But somehow we got things become too dissociated. We stopped communicating well. Maybe we never learned to communicate well, and now we have to start from scratch. But we definitely, in my opinion, need to have both. We need masculine and feminine in its fullness, in its strength, and its immature expression. And I think personally that when women figure out themselves and reduce their anxiety and be able to communicate and connect better with others, they can then support others and support men as well in elevating them to the new level.
I think it's just there's a different way our brains are programmed. And so, I know from my corporate experience, it would be things like sitting in a management meeting and knowing that A to B makes logical sense on paper, and me being able to see that logic, but as the only woman saying, I know A to B makes sense on paper, but I think we need to do A to C because I've taken into account other human emotional factors and gut feeling that you haven't done. And I remember every single time I was ignored, and every single time, 2 to 3 weeks later, we'd end up doing A to C. And, I remember sitting the guys down in my last permanent role and saying, what is it? Is it because I'm a woman that you don't take it as important as the way that you think? And they were often just saying, well, you couldn't prove it. You can't prove it. So I also think there's, the way that we think needs to be balanced. Yes, rational thinking is critical, but also the addition of emotional thinking, I think, only elevates that.
Yeah, it's something that I think that probably many women would agree that they have felt at least at some point being dismissed by those in charge and not listened to and not really considered in the decision making or in the bigger aspects of the project. And that has been the trend. But by coming together, I think, and being so, here's how I see the feminine power really rising, and that's being aware of the self, being aware of what we know, what we are, what women good at and better at, knowing all that and owning that to its fullest extent, like creativity and nurturing and gut feeling and intuition and all of that, knowing that, and the difference in the brain structure and the hormonal aspects of female biology, knowing all that, owning that, and not feeling bad or ashamed about having emotions, having different perspectives, and all of that. I think that is the key for moving into the next version of how feminine energy expresses itself in the world.
I completely agree. I think, there's too much talk for me of equality, and not enough talk of equity because we are different. And I'm not saying that a woman cannot do the things that a man can do. Of course we can. it's not actually true the other way round. There are physical things that men cannot do. Doesn't mean that one is better than the other, but we are different. The way that we approach things, men put on different coloured football jerseys and they hate each other.
Yeah.
And women kind of find it weird to see the guys, cheering their teams and passionately supporting the Reds or the Blues. And I'm not saying women don't, but it's a much more masculine thing to do. Again, it's taking sides and being combative in the way they approach things. Women are much more, I don't think if two women from two opposing sides of a war sat down both with their, 18-year-old sons and spoke with each other and said, we're likely to send both our sons to be killed. Do you not think we should talk about this a little bit more first? I think the women would come to some kind of solution because they wouldn't want their children being killed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just listening to a podcast recently where, in light of this conversation of equality, the point was brought up that there was a research done in law firms and how actually inequity was being propagated through selecting of the people who were more disagreeable to promote them higher. And then when they get to the higher levels, they become these very disagreeable and kind of aggressive leaders, which actually did worse for the organizations than if they selected other people to be in charge. So that is an interesting dynamic that if you're not aware of it, it can lead towards the paths that later could cause some potential damage.
Yep. And it's completely agree. It's often, funny enough, men who will then say with this discussion, but women can be very bitchy and just look how, they behave towards each other. And there is some of that that's true. And my belief is that that's not how we naturally are. I think that's come from a position of scarcity. So within corporate environments, I think women have had to behave like men in order to succeed. And once you behave like men, you want to be seen with one of the boys. Therefore, you lose the emotional side, you lose the gut feeling and the sensitivity that you have because you are being like a man. And there, you're also afraid that there aren't more spaces available for women. So you can become very anti supporting your fellow women in their climb up the career ladder. And those are things that as women, we now have to unlearn.
That's actually been something that I was thinking a lot for a while, because what has happened to women is that they turn themselves into men in the corporate environment. And that is where all the negative traits that we hear about from women leaders or about women leaders in the workplace have come out, because they tried so hard to become something that they're not. And what has it resulted in many areas is actually lack of, it even affects the personal relationships, because if woman becomes a man at work, she carries it over to her home as well, and then she becomes dominating and very aggressive, and then the whole entire masculine feminine polarity gets destroyed because of that. But that has been based on the scarcity mentality, on the mindset that there's only so much resources and you have to fight for it and you have to stab each other in the back in order to progress. And then there is this glass ceiling that you can never pass through. There's all these limitations. So it hasn't been easy for women to be in that environment. Not only that, but they're expected, I keep saying that they are being expected to do everything. They expect to give birth to children. They expect to take care of them. They expect to take care of their family, their distant family. They also expected to work and keep their emotions in check and not share and not overwhelm others too much with their feminine nature. And in the end, what we have is the shell of a woman.
You have a look at, I think motherhood, for example, is the most important career on the planet. A mother being able, and I'm not saying a mother shouldn't work, I'm just saying motherhood as a role is so undervalued as a profession because that helps the next generation give them the values, how to behave. And then you start looking at all the other professions that are deemed female professions and how much they are paid in comparison to male professions. So the lowest paid professions, the teachers, the nurses, the child care professionals are all paid at the bottom of the pay scale. And I always think it's amazing how, people can go off to their corporate jobs and leave their most precious baggage, i.e., their child, in the responsibility of people who are paid the very bottom of the pay scale because caring professions are not seen as valuable in this world.
But not only that, women also afraid to leave the workforce in order to care for their child because their skills will become outdated. And it has been found that it's much more difficult to re-enter the workforce after having an extended leave period than if you just continue working. So there's all these aspects that are part of this. And when I was even 10 years ago, when I was a young mother, I had all these conflicting ideas as to who should I be? What should I be doing? I have been following a career path and I've been doing very well, but now I'm a mother. What am I supposed to do? And where is my strength? All these questions, on top of all the worries that women have, it's not easy. And I just want to give a shout out to all the women who are dealing with that worldwide because it is a challenge. It is something we've been working through for quite some time, and we don't have the villages to depend on like in the older times where the child is being raised by the village. In the urban environment, families are so much more separated from their extended family, and so it becomes a different dynamic in that regard, and more pressure is being put on women but also on men in that dynamic as well. Everybody kind of suffers.
Yeah, and I think the other thing behind womanship is this village mentality. So at one point we did live in villages where we had our sisters, our cousins, our mums, our aunts, all in one location. So when we were facing a problem or worry, there was a village to deal with it. And now that we're all living, in disparate places from our close family, we don't have those connections anymore. So all the things that we've been talking about and all the worries that arise from them, so whether that's career and finance orientated or sex and relationships, all of them we are dealing with more individually when there are other women experiencing the same thing. And for me, it's about giving us that opportunity to realize we're not alone, to give us the opportunity to talk to other women and get the support and validation we need to make us realize that, yes, we're all dealing with these things and there are things that we can do and resources we can go to and specialists who can help us.
Yes, and in addition to that, I've noticed that in the past there has been reluctance for women to speak up about various subjects, just like you said, the Me Too movement, the emotional nature of women and how they didn't want to share about that, not wanted to share about miscarriages or difficulties in their feminine health type of aspects. And then there are larger global issues that people are afraid to speak on about. So there has been, and in the recent times, there's been more of an evolution of people learning to become more courageous and speak more freely, even though it's gradual and slow. But I still think we're moving towards that place where we're able to authentically express ourselves, what we feel and what we believe, without feeling the fear of repercussions of that.
I think we are definitely moving in that direction. One of the things that I'm doing with Womanship is helping women tell their authentic stories. So the line is share more, worry less for Womanship. And with the share more side, I'm just starting to record interviews with women and again using the anonymity as a layer of protection for them. And it's really interesting because when a woman tells a story and tells it anonymously, they're very different things because anonymously, she really goes into the details of what happened, how events occurred, and she can tell the full story. So I also think we've got a little way to go with having that complete authenticity with being ourselves. I just We've got one that goes out or is just about to go out, and it's with a woman who was attacked by her ex partner and two of his friends. And it took her 10 years to tell anybody through societal shame, through female shame. We often have, was it because I was alone? Was I wearing the wrong clothes? What had I had a drink? All these things we hold as reasons why we can't actually express our truths. And she carried that with her for 10 years. So the emotional baggage and what that caused in her life is huge. So I think we learn a lot from hearing stories. That's how we learn. That's how we've always learned. So I think as women, it's important for us to tell our stories so other women learn from them, see our strength in having got through them or getting through them, and also maybe see themselves in the story. So they go, actually, I'm not the only one that happened to, or I'm not the only one who's experienced that. Therefore, I can then see the strength that somebody else has and find that strength to get through the challenges I have.
Absolutely. I agree with that. And I'm curious to know if in your work and in the last however many years you've been working on womanship, you experienced reluctance to go forward with that project or reluctance to do something about it.
It's such a strange one. I mean, I never thought I would be in this position of being a solo female founder. I loved my career in corporate. I really did. I worked in, as I said, big companies, lots of travel, great clients, great activities and campaigns. Moving into this, I think the biggest reluctance has been how much I don't know. There's to set a business up and especially to develop a tech platform, there's so much I don't know. So there's always this fear of, do I know enough to go forward? Am I doing the right thing? Am I working on the right thing? But the idea connects with women so much that gives me the strength to go forward. And it's really strange. I loved, as I said, I loved the career, but this, I'm being driven by something differently now. And it's very strange when people talk about purpose. It's not that I didn't have purpose before, but I found my own personal purpose with this where I have to see where it goes. I'm driven by this thing of, I hope I can make it a success, but there's some passion that I've got burning within me that helps me get over my fears and reluctance every day of, I wake up in the morning going, what am I meant to be doing today? Am I doing the right thing? There's no one telling me anything. It's me just figuring it out and making mistakes and repivoting my course. But that purpose is really a driving force. So I have to see where this goes. And that's been that's helped me overcome any reluctance to really not knowing what the true course is for the business.
Wow, that is incredible. This is an incredible example of what the true, authentic drive really looks like that comes from the spirit within, from the heart, from the desire of the greater something that wants to express itself through the person. This is what it looks like. And if anybody has perceived the process, it's never clear. Whenever an unknown or a spirit or source or whatever wants to come through a person and express and create something new in the world, it's always challenging because it's completely new. It's never been seen before. And even you being a marketing professional, it shows how even though you know about marketing, it's still not enough when you're looking at the expanse of this entire giant project that wants to come through you, and you're moving forward without knowing where it's going to go, but your determination to see it through is that really what carries. But one of the things that I perceive in this story is that when in the past there might have been startups or businesses that were based on one person and they were able to succeed with just one person driving it, in this new version of feminine ownership there's a collaboration that is required to make it happen. It's not just one person, it's a combination of minds and combination of different people coming together. It's called social entrepreneurship that I love so much. And that is what it seems like you're the direction in which you're moving into.
Yes, it's interesting. I mean, the seeing things through and moving forward, I look back and I realize that actually I've never been able to plot the course and know exactly where I'm going. I think often we think we are able to, but the destination is often not where we set course for. And I started to realize, even going into work previously, that I can go into work or sit down at my desk and say, okay, I need to get from A to B. That's all I need to do today. And then every call I have, every email that comes in could deflect that course from the A to B. So I realize I'm not as in control of my life as I thought I was. But I am very good. And again, it comes back to this 100% record. I've got a 100% record of reacting to things that happen. So it's, I used to spend a long time, a problem comes up, a long time thinking about what do I do next? What's the next step when somebody else actually needs to act? And now I'm very much, I need to let them act and then I will decide what to do. I'm not going to let my brain be filled with how they could respond, because if I think about 360 degrees of what they could say, they always do the 360 first. So what's the point in me wasting my time thinking about what somebody else is going to do? I know I can react to it. That's all I need to know. That saved me really a lot. And then you also talked about women coming together and the social entrepreneur side of this. And for me, that's really important because I want wellness professionals to come to this platform from the perspective of plenty. There's enough for all of us out there. And by helping build the community together, we will build it quicker. And by that, I mean that most of them have mailing lists. Most of them are seeing, and this is an exaggeration, probably 10% of people on their mailing list. They may convert another 10, but they all say to me that we know that we are mailing 80% of people who will never come to see us for something. But actually, if we pull those percentages, then somebody who's coming to see me about something, or sorry, not seeing me, but is in my mailing list, may come and look at your services, and somebody from your mailing list may go and see someone else. So that's how I see this collaboration and social entrepreneurship. By building it together, we can build a great community where we all benefit.
Yeah, I love that. It's just like a massive joint venture among
Yeah,
women. Yeah, it's
yeah.
amazing. And in short, this is what required to overcome reluctance. Two things: this inner drive, this purpose, that kind of something bigger than yourself, and trust that universe will provide the next step.
And the other thing that I think is really important is people to think seriously and ask themselves the question, what's the worst that can happen? And I think that's so true in terms of when you think about the worst that can happen, the worst that can happen through me leaving the corporate career, becoming very poor as a startup founder, the worst that can happen is it doesn't work and I go back into corporate. That's the very worst that can happen. I already know that. And because I know that, it means that it's not a big deal anymore. I just still keep pushing forward. I moved to Amsterdam on a whim, and it was like, what's the worst that can happen? The job doesn't work out, my new relationship doesn't work out, I hate Amsterdam. Meh, I moved back to London and a life I loved. So that really helps frame things. We can be so afraid of the unknown. Tell yourself the unknown. This is the worst that could happen. All right, I know that. Now time to move on.
That is the Stoics' philosophy, and I think it's most applicable to women who have propensity for worrying. Use those techniques and those tools to really plan and plot the worst case scenario. So you don't just have plan B, you have plan B and C and D and F and the whole alphabet of plans. It's possible, it's not that difficult to come up with the options of where to go on, or what to do. And especially if this message resonates with women who are in their midlife, in their stage of life where they have experienced a lot, all those skills and experience are very useful for building even more resilience and adaptability.
Yeah, completely agree. I think I'm living proof of that.
And with all of that resilience and adaptability comes creativity, and creativity leads to innovation. And when we're being innovative, we can change the entire world.
I really believe that. I think that's what we have in our hands as women. And I think it's about being able to make the most of it and give ourselves the brain capacity through worrying less to enable to be creative and innovative. And that's really what I want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's just, I think as the current generation of women watching the younger generation growing up, I think it's even our responsibility to step up and to be better versions of ourselves, to show the way as to what is possible for the younger women who are just starting their working career, starting their relationship lives, and all of that.
And they have they've got a lot of things sorted that we didn't have. they're much more forthright. They set their boundaries a lot better than I think we did. But I still think there's stuff that they can learn from us and our experience, and also we can learn from them. So, again, this is my thought of just bringing women together and learning from each other. There's so much, as you say, experience and knowledge that we have about work, yes, but also about life things. And the ability, it's funny, I know a lot of women who have been through a medical issue and they've done so much research around it to the point of almost self diagnosing themselves after years of going to the doctor, that they have so much knowledge to share that they're actually helping other women and saying, you maybe need to check this out. That idea of sharing information, sharing resources, sharing things that can help another woman, I think is magical when you think about what that could actually achieve.
Absolutely. And also, that would, by extent, overcome the problem that we have seen in the past where women become invisible when they become old. By sharing and being the leaders and new ways of approaching things, we can now transcend this idea that woman in her 60s, 70s, 80s is useless to the world.
And that's so important because we're buying into a societal narrative that has been created. Yes, everything is about the maiden and worshipping the maiden and worshipping youth. And you have a look at, people trying to look younger and almost fight against the aging process. And there's nothing I hate more than hearing anti-aging. We are aging. So, how do we age gracefully? And until we stop trying to behave like, as I said, I'm in my mid 50s, until we stop trying to dress and behave like women in their 20s, this will never change. Um, People used to say to me, and it's up until fairly recently, and everybody would say, "Oh my God, you don't look anywhere near your age." And I used to take it as such a huge compliment. And then somebody said to me, why don't you just say this is what 55 looks like? And it was such a brain shift for me going, oh my gosh, I've been playing into this whole narrative. This is what 55 can look like. So I think as women, we also have to stop playing into this narrative that makes us redundant and makes us feel like we have no worth, and actually start standing up for the fact that women at all ages, just like men, are equally valuable.
Yeah, not until we really start equating age with wisdom and telling people how it's appropriate or inappropriate to treat someone. Until then, we will still going to be in the old ages of everything. So it is up to us to step into our full self, to express those boundaries, maybe get inspiration from younger people who are so great at that, and really express that we have a collection of wisdom that can only have happened based on our previous experience, on our life, on our challenges we've overcome, and that is carries tremendous value. And the older we get, the more value we have.
I hope mine continues.
Well, by extent, if we already have value, it can only grow if we are becoming more and more self-aware. And that's why I advocate so much about personal development, personal growth, awareness, looking at all the patterns, resolving all the issues within the self so that we can be more effective in the world.
It's so true. And I think, the biggest first step is coming to terms with who you are as an individual. And I think we can all be so harsh on ourselves. And actually, I remember when this point came in my life in terms of reevaluating myself and who I was and becoming more aware of who I was. And it was very much looking at myself and saying, I'm actually an okay person. I try and do the right things. Yes, I might fuck up from time to time, but I do try. I don't try and hurt anybody and I don't try and do mean things. So that means if I was judging that in somebody else, I would judge them as a good person. So actually, I don't shouldn't be looking for that validation. I have to start with myself, and I had to evaluate it and go, actually, you're okay, Nick. You're trying. Actually, that's a good foundation. And then that really was the start of a transformation in me many years ago to go, I'm okay. I'm okay.
100%. Yeah, self-actualization depends on self-forgiveness, self-love, and stopping self-judgment, which leads to shame and all kinds of anxiety. So that is essential, really. And so in closing, I mean, this has been an amazing, amazing episode, and I hope listeners got a lot of value and inspiration that things are possible and things can get better in the future. I usually ask guests for a final message, but there's been so many messages. I don't know if there is any more, but if you can summarize in few words the final thought of your mission, your purpose, and where you're going, so that it can just like really drive the point of this conversation, what would it be?
Gosh, we've discussed so much. For me, it's about women supporting women. We've never done this, ladies, in the way that we should do. We've never done this across borders, across races, across religions. And I think women have the ability to solve many of the issues in the world if we come together in support of each other and understanding of each other first. Then we can come together as a force and help make this world a better place for everyone.
Yeah, I love it. Amazing. And so where can people find more about this womanship platform?
Okay, so you can follow us on Instagram at underscore womanship. You can follow the website and sign up for our beta test, which is womanship.co. And as I said, hopefully we'll be opening the doors to the platform very soon. Technical issues are always there with a tech platform, so working hard on getting those resolved. But I'm really excited to put womanship out in the world and hopefully make a difference.
Amazing. Thank you very much. I will put the description and the links below so people can find it. And it's been amazing conversation. Thank you so much for your time and your wisdom and your sharing and all of that.
Thank you so much for having me. I've really, really loved speaking with you. Thank you.
Thank you all for listening and for watching, and we will see you next time in another episode.